good afternoon. It is your host, Emmanuel Isaiah Smith. Today's date is Saturday, July 2025. The time is 4:56 p.m. and welcome to part 3 of my 3-part lecture, Ideal Population and the Technology Used to Secure that Ideal Population. Now mind you, when I say the technology used to secure that ideal population, I'm not saying that this technology was to keep the ideal population secure or safe. That's not what I mean. When I say the technology used to secure the ideal population, I mean the technology used to make sure the ideal population is the population, not only in the United States but on this planet. Now, before I get into the technology part of this lecture, I'm going to say a few words about population control, because ultimately this concept that I'm asserting, what is the ideal population, okay, it has to do with the idea that, first of all, there is an ideal population. Secondly, what does that population do? And thirdly, why is that population important? Now, these sound like very multi-layered questions that require elaborate answers, but you can actually boil this particular idea down to size, as they say. For one, every government in the world that collects data on its citizens has an idea of which citizens are the ideal citizens. And what I mean by the ideal citizens is the citizens that every government sees as preferable citizens. These are the kinds of citizens that any government wishes their entire population was made of. Okay? Now let's take country X. We'll call it country X. It doesn't have to be any particular country. We're just going to use country X as an example. So we have country X, and it has a population of, we'll say, 500 million people. And of that 500 million, as with any country, 49% are men, 51% are women. And also, like any other country, country X's majority is at least 70% of the population, and then the minority of country X, we'll say, is 30% of the population. Like any country, country X has a top 1%, which in respect to the top earners in the country. It has classes. For example, it has your wealthy class, and mind you, I am not an opponent of wealth, but I acknowledge that it does exist. There are wealthy people in the world, that is simply a fact. Then you have your upper middle classes, Then you have your middle classes. Then you have your lower middle classes. Then you have your impoverished classes. Country X is structured in this manner, just like any other country. Furthermore, just like any other country, Country X has a central bank. Okay, a bank of issue. A bank that is the policy setter for all economic activity of every other bank in the country, public or private. And as with any other country, Country X has an executive leadership. Okay, for all intents and purposes, we're going to call Country X we'll call it a free market state. We're not going to say necessarily capitalism, but we're going to say free market. Country X has a thriving marketplace. It has public and private buyers in this marketplace. It has a major religion, and it has minor religions. Obviously, the majority of the country of Country X are adherents to, at least loosely at least, affiliated with the major religion. Country X has a history of founding a constitution. It has publicly appointed officials, and it has popularly elected officials, just like any other country. Country X has colleges and universities. It has high schools, middle schools. It has charter schools and private schools. Country X is a debt-based economy, meaning you must take out loans for college, for homes, for vehicles, for lots of things. And you're expected to pay them back against your earning potential and your credit score. Country X has seen wars. Country X has avoided wars. Country X has a voter block, and Country X has people who choose not to vote. Country X has people that contribute to its society, and Country X has people who do not contribute. Furthermore, Country X has people who have plenty, and Country X has people who have very little. Country X has a criminal justice system, a civil litigation system. Country X has a hierarchy of courts, meaning there is a top court, and then there are several other high courts that answer to that top court, and then there are local courts that handle public appeals and are essentially court of common pleas, as they say. Country X has a military, and Country X has a military industrial sector. Ultimately, Country X also has surveillance because, quite frankly, Country X is beholden to its citizens with respect to making them safe. Because like any government, Country X has an unwritten contract that it goes into with its citizens the moment they become citizens. The majority of Country X's citizens are born here. The rest of them have immigrated here from other countries by legal means. Country X has a very tight border, meaning that it is impossible or nearly impossible to enter Country X illegally. So what that means is that of the population of Country X, most, if not all of its citizens are documented. Okay? Now, there's data collection in Country X. Country X has a system of purchases that it makes with the technology sector. And there are high degrees of surveillance going on in Country X, namely to ensure the public good. The reason surveillance exists in Country X is so it can intercept crime before it happens, especially violent crimes. And all of the surveillance that happens in Country X is for that purpose, to stop crime before it happens. And it is very successful in Country X. As a result of this philosophy of criminal justice, Country X has very low violent crime because it intercepts those violent crimes before they happen using its police force, both plainclothes and uniform. Country X also utilizes its military in efforts to fight crime, particularly in times of peace rather than war. Country X has a flat tax for its citizens depending on their income bracket. So if you are in income bracket A, you have a flat tax. If you are in income bracket B, a flat tax. And these are on your gross earnings. Income brackets C, D, E, and F also have a flat tax, and all of these flat taxes are based upon the gross yearly earnings of the citizen divided into quarterly payments. This ensures that the tax revenues of the state are maximized while allowing the citizen as much of their own money as possible. And as a result of that, Country X has a good relationship with its citizens. Now, Country X has decided to collect data on its citizens. As an experiment, it wants to collect as much data not only on human behavior, but on human interactions with each other, with companies, and with the government. So Country X puts together an elaborate multi-trillion-dollar project to find out what citizens react and interact best with each other, with companies, and with their governments. Which citizens react best to each other, to businesses, and to their governments, and why? As a local scooter head flies by me at a high rate of speed, nearly missing me, as I stand here in Doral, Florida, across the street from the Crossroads Business Complex, which is obviously an act of provocation. And if that continues to happen throughout this lecture is going to get more and more adversarial, not to country X, because this is a fictional country, but to the United States federal government, which is an actual country. So if whatever these liaisons you guys got running around, I don't know what you pay them, or if they make a decent living off of this gang stalking stuff, but if they keep acting up and trying to disrupt this lecture, this is going to turn into something very different than me talking about technology. Okay, it's going to turn into a political philosophy exercise as to why the United States federal government is a failed entity. Okay, and I know I'm being listened to by various federal auxiliaries right now as I speak, because I can kind of see their activity around me. So if you keep disrupting this, I'm going to invoke my rights of the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, and I'm going to let people know what I really think about you live, not on paper. Okay? Live, right here and now. Okay? So, back to business. Country X has decided to collect data on its citizens to see who the ideal citizens are with respect to who in this country interacts best with other citizens, with companies, and with the government. So, for argument's sake, and for time's sake, we are going to say that the top 1%, okay, the wealthiest in the country, at the end of this study, which used a massive amount of public and private surveillance of citizens and their behaviors, not only their purchasing behaviors, but their casual interactions with each other, companies, and the government. Let's say that there was a point system awarded, and the top 1%, namely the wealthiest at the end of this study, came out on top with respect to this point system. And the wealthiest were deemed by Country X's federal government to be the ideal citizens, not with respect to how much they pay in taxes, because mind you, wealthy people always pay more in taxes than people below their income brackets. It's just the numbers game behind it. So we're not talking about their purchasing power or their ability to pay taxes or the amount of taxes that they pay. We're talking about their daily interactions, the effectiveness, the efficiency, okay, the usefulness of their interactions are above the rest according to this point system. So now the government has its answer. It has its champion. It's income bracket A, the top 1%, based on this point system, which was implemented as fairly as possible by a team of economists and political scientists. The top 1% won. So they are deemed by the government of Country X to be the most effective, efficient, and useful citizens with respect to how they interact with the world around them. Now, there are a number of other pieces of data that need to be collected now. Now we need to know some other things about the winner of this contest. Now the government wants to know, what is their ethnic makeup? What is their family history? What were their academic grades like? What courses of study did they follow in college? What kind of public records have they generated? How have they handled themselves in courts of law? How many children do they have on average? What kind of sports do they play? What kind of music do they purchase? If they do leisurely activity like video games or casual vacations, what do they play? What kind of vacations do they go on? How long are they on vacation? How much do they spend on the family vacation? How do they allot their property after one of them passes away? How do they settle disputes within the family if any arises? What kinds of cars do they drive and for how long? Do they like two-wheel drive or four-wheel drive and why? How often do they buy gasoline? What are their habits of purchasing groceries and so forth? How much sleep do they get each night? What are the relationships between husband and wife like in these top 1% categories? How do these people vote? Who do they vote for and why? What kinds of television programs do they watch at home? What kind of movies do they go out and see? What kinds of entertainment do they make available to their children during their formative years? How are their children reared? How are their children taught right and wrong? How are their children taught mature themes like, for example, reproduction or religion or the afterlife or what it means to be a human being on this earth? How are all these things handled by the group that the government has deemed the most efficient of them all? The ideal group. The group that has outperformed all the other groups with how they interact with the world around them. Okay, what are these people's health like? What is their diet like? How often do they visit the doctor for checkups? How often do they do vaccines? All right, here comes another scooter head. If this is a liaison attack, then we're going to change the topic right now. Because that's probably what they want. They don't like it when I lay things out real nice and smooth. They like to try and disrupt what I got going. Because they want this to turn ugly, so they'll have a reason to retaliate against me later. So we'll just see what happens. Okay. So ultimately, every behavior that this ideal group, including their buying behaviors, will be officially documented by the state of country X. Using a variety of factors. It's not difficult to pull someone's bank statements or their mortgage statements or their hospital bills or their insurance company bills or their car notes or their school transcripts or their voting records, their credit scores, their phone records. Okay, all these things paint a picture of a person. And at the end of all this, it appears that this Group A won the competition. Now the government wants to know more intimate details about them. Why? Well, because maybe this government, country X, wants all its citizens to be like bracket A. Now that we know why bracket A has proven its superiority to all the other brackets, now we want to make it so that every bracket conducts themselves like bracket A. So brackets B, C, D, E, and F, now all of you are going to experience sort of a sweep. We are going to use bracket A as the standard of the ideal citizen, because we've determined that they are the ideal citizen, and we want all of you, brackets B through F, we want you all to now act like bracket A, because they've proven that they are the most efficient and effective citizens of this country. And we want future generations of this country to be more like bracket A, because they're the most effective and they are the most useful to this society. Now at this point, the citizens that belong to brackets B through F, although they greatly outnumber bracket A, they're getting ready to undergo a transformation whether they like it or not. And because brackets B through F outnumber bracket A, this change that's about to happen, it's going to have to happen quietly, otherwise brackets B through F might revolt. So we put together these social engineering programs that force brackets B through F to be more like bracket A, although it's going to be something like this. Bracket A's spending behaviors, their consumption of entertainment behaviors, their behaviors between husband and wife, their behaviors between parent and child, their study habits, their classroom behaviors, their sporting interests, their political beliefs, their religious practices, all of these things are now going to be imposed on brackets B through F, albeit clandestinely, so that brackets B through F don't get offended. Because after all, brackets B through F, matter of fact, brackets A through F, none of them know that their government, namely Country X, has conducted this experiment. They've conducted it in private. However, the results of this experiment are going to be felt widely. Now, maybe brackets B through F, maybe someone in brackets B through F finds out about this. Then what? Well, that's up for the government of Country X to decide. They'll probably silence the dissent. Why? Because if you're in a bracket B through F, we as the government have determined that you are not quite as effective or efficient as the people in bracket A. So if you get disgruntled at the social engineering programs that we've put together to make you more like bracket A, then you will be silenced, because your feeling of disenfranchisement as to how we're doing our social engineering platform is of little importance to us in the grand scheme of things. Why? Because bracket A has proven to us that they are the most useful and their behaviors are going to be your behaviors, so you can help this society be more like bracket A. You can either take it and roll with the program, or we're gonna roll over you. All right, here comes a third scooter. Now, mind you, Miami-Dade County is full of people that ride electric scooters. I just think it's kind of strange that within 27 minutes of this discourse, all of a sudden I'm seeing scooter after scooter after scooter. It looks like a disruption tactic, but I'm gonna keep talking. Because if you remember in part 2 of this discourse, which I did last night, some of the people riding by on these various two-wheeled vehicles were being extremely disgusting and annoying, intrusive, disruptive. I mean, every adjective you can think of for an undesirable person to pop up during a educational lecture. Those are the adjectives I described to the people that were popping up last night, and I probably used some swear words, and I don't take them back either. Let's continue. So ultimately, brackets B through F are going to be forced by the state to be more like bracket A. And quite frankly, no one can really protest, because 25 years prior, the government of country X found a way to implement into its legal code a permission for this project. So this project is not illegal because it was passed through the federal legislative body of country X 25 years prior without anybody knowing it. So the end of the story is going to be this. This government implemented this project. We'll call it Project X. Bracket A were seen to be the most useful citizens, and then brackets B through F were forced to mimic bracket A by law. Even though the laws were clandestine and no one really ever saw them. They were implemented, so they are law. And 100 years later, Country X achieved its goal. 100% of the population now behaves like bracket A. 100% of the population is like bracket A. Another scooter. I'm not going to keep calling them out, because I think that's the point of this. They want me to keep stopping my lecture to call them out, so I'm not going to give them the time of day. We'll let them go make their name somewhere else. So 100 years later, Project X resulted in brackets A through F achieving what's called popular singularity, meaning basically the society is now completely homogeneous, meaning that there is very little derivation, there is very little variation in how people act, think, work, or behave, period. There's very little deviation, there's very little variation, and the society is now completely homogeneous, and everyone thinks and speaks with one mind. There are governments in the world that I do believe who have people in them. I'm not going to say the entire government, the entire federal establishment, but I believe that every government on planet Earth has a federal establishment that has some people in it, some. that had a dream, a fantasy of seeing a totally homogenous society, kind of like Country X's has, where all of the people are similar and there's very little variation from one family to the next with respect to how they think, act, and behave. But I think that these representatives that have this fantasy, I think they genuinely would like to see people think, act, and behave in an efficient manner, in a manner that advances their country into the next millennium, and the millennium after that, and the millennium after that. But that has to be achieved using the best and brightest people. And if all you have are the best and brightest, then you can achieve that goal easier, while everyone else falls by the wayside. Now, how can these types of things be carried out? Well, the only way to do it is through technology. The only way to do it is through data gathering. And the only way to do it is through constant indoctrination of your population, which I'm not saying is in America is totally horrible. I mean, there's good and bad things about every country, but I will tell you this. There is something in this country called gangstalking. And that particular program was implemented in secret. Okay, there was no debate on the Senate floor for gangstalking. We're going to get into some of this technology. This technology was, and if you've listened to discourses 1 and 2 on this Ideal Citizen series, you will see that the technology that's used in gang-stalking campaigns on targeted individuals to see how it affects them. Okay, we are human guinea pigs. We were never supposed to figure this out, but we have. Sorry. Well, not sorry, but it is what it is. I'm putting it out there, with the hopes that this program could be either seriously revamped or completely done away with, because it violates life, liberty, and happiness, which are key precepts of the United States Constitution. All of the technology here that I've presented to you over the last 2 lectures are built by what might be described as the best and brightest citizens that America has to offer with respect to the arrangement of these devices and the uses, the available uses of these devices. The government has spent trillions of dollars of your tax money on these devices, not only for its military to fight foreign threats, okay, not only for the law enforcement mechanism to fight crime, okay, those are positive uses for technology. But if you're going to use technology to do things like sabotage a person, or if you're going to use these technologies as a way to disrupt a person, or if you're going to use these technologies as a way to confuse people or manipulate people, or to cause them to live lesser lives than they would have had you not used this technology on them, then that's a problem. That's a violation of their constitutional rights. It's a violation of their civil rights and liberties. Okay, we're going to look at black satellites. Now, mind you, these are called black satellites not because they're used to monitor black people. They're called black satellites because they are named after a company called Black Sky, which is a constellation of satellites and its related technologies rather than a specific type of satellite. So, for example, the company Black Sky produces these satellites called black satellites, which are basically templates of satellites that can be used to enhance the effectiveness of already existing satellites. So Black Sky owns and operates constellations of microsatellites designed for high-resolution imaging and monitoring. So, for example, let's say there's a manhunt underway. Let's say a citizen of this country, the United States of America, commits a heinous crime somewhere. And this heinous crime is going to be investigated by not only the Department of Justice, but the Department of Defense. The Department of Defense has decided to loan the Department of Justice its services in finding and apprehending this person. It is possible that something similar to a Black Sky satellite would be used in finding this person. Because, mind you, people use disguises, people use all kinds of ways of evading the law. So you have to use high-end technology to apprehend fugitives, especially dangerous fugitives. So it's possible that a country like Black Sky could be contacted by the Department of Defense and given this guy's tendencies, his personal data, his vital statistics, his work history, everything. It's possible that a satellite company, whether it's an outer space satellite company or an interspace satellite company, mind you, there are satellites in outer space, but there are also satellites in our realm right now that are essentially stationary satellites that can be used to locate a person and generate their image and send their image to law enforcement with their exact location. So Black Sky will assist in things like that. The Internet of Things, that's something most people already know about. Your refrigerator, your air conditioner, your heater, your watch, your bicycle, your car. Non-computer items can connect to the internet now. And what that allows for is it allows for interconnectivity. For example, you can change the temperature of your house from your home or from your work or from your tablet or iPhone or your watch. And you can do lots of things in various non-computer aspects using the Internet of Things model, meaning non-computer items can connect to the internet now. It also makes a person more accessible, which is not a bad thing. You being accessible is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing for your country, your government, typically to have access to your location. It's actually a good thing. People are safer that way. But if your government is using your exact location through your various gadgets to send mobs of harassers to you, some of which are sick or carrying diseases for you, that becomes a crime against humanity. That's the kind of activity that I speak out against. Okay, next we have neural data mining, which is basically harnessing the power of the brain for insights. Neural data mining is a rapidly developing field that uses technologies like artificial neural networks to extract valuable insights and patterns from neural data sources like brain recordings and simulations. Inspired by the brain's structure and powerful tools for tasks like classification, prediction, and pattern recognition, enabling researchers to understand complex relationships in neural information that traditional methods might miss. At its core, neural data mining uses ANNs to analyze neural data and identify hidden patterns and relationships. This involves steps like data acquisition and pre-processing, gathering raw neural data from sources such as animal models, human subjects, or simulations, and preparing it for analysis by cleaning and transforming it into a usable format. Feature extraction and selection includes identifying and selecting relevant features from the pre-processed data that are most informative for the mining task. Model training and optimization. Training ANNs on the prepared data to learn patterns and relationships, optimizing the model's performance through techniques like backpropagation and fine-tuning parameters. Pattern recognition and interpretation. Using the trained ANN to analyze new neural data, identify patterns, and interpret their meaning in a human understandable way. Applications of neural data mining. Neural data mining holds immense potential in areas like healthcare and neuroscience, diagnosing neurological disorders, analyzing neural data to develop new diagnostic tools for conditions like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease, developing brain-computer interfaces and neuroprosthetics, allowing individuals to control devices with their thoughts, especially beneficial for those with paralysis or motor disorders. Personalized medicine, tailoring treatment plans based on an individual's neural data and genetic information. Business and finance, customer segmentation and behavior analysis, understanding customer preferences and predicting churn for targeted marketing strategies. Fraud detection, identifying unusual patterns and anomalies in financial transactions to detect and prevent fraud. Security and defense, facial and image recognition, developing advanced surveillance and identification systems. Cybersecurity, detecting unusual patterns in network traffic to identify potential threats and intrusions. So, as you can see from that description, neural data mining is an all-encompassing data collection module. It collects behavior, it collects human data, such as human behaviors, such as their buying behaviors, their psychological behaviors with respect to like health reports, psychology reports, psychiatry reports. It collects data from the criminal justice system. It collects data from people's television watching behaviors, which are recorded now by cable companies. Okay? It's not a bad thing. But in the wrong hands, it can be a chaotic thing. You see, just like all the technology here. In the right hands, this kind of technology can change the world for the better. It can make people better. It can make them happier. It can make them more stable. It can make them more useful. But in the wrong hands, as many targeted individuals have unfortunately found out, quote, the hard way, this kind of technology can be used to disrupt and destroy a person's life as well. So if you look at something like data mining, neural data mining, it is a technological wonder. Okay? The people who created such a protocol should pat themselves on the back. They definitely have the capacity to contribute to mankind with innovations like this. But they also have to be careful not to become self-absorbed to the point where they can just throw this stuff around and let anybody get their hands on it. Okay, now neural data mining also is the collection of people's computer habits, which is not a bad thing. Your government should know how you use a computer. Okay? Because some people use computers to do horrible things to other people. Some people use computers to destabilize society and communities. Some people use computer to interact with people who may want to commit heinous crimes somewhere. So the government should know what a person's computer habits are so that it can identify potential threats to society. My computer habits are being monitored. I don't mind. If you are a government official and you've sworn an oath of service to your country and you have been assigned to my computer activity, go right ahead. I welcome it. Because you know it's going to be seen, the truth. And you're going to be able to process the truth, and you're going to be able to identify true statements, and you are going to be able to relay these true statements to your superiors for processing. And eventually, the federal establishment of this country will realize that a mistake has been made and too much power has been given to people who might abuse that power. So, back to neural data mining. It can be used to predict human behavior using a combination of the gathering of all of this person's identifiable data, their vital statistics, and their public records. Echelon. This is a particularly interesting program to me. This is the next program after data mining. This is called Echelon. Echelon is a particularly interesting module to me. And we're going to read its auspices, and I'll tell you why it's particularly interesting to me. And at the 48-minute mark, should this program run over the hour, we will divide it into 2 segments, and this will be part 3, and the next segment will be part 4. So, Echelon. The United Kingdom has a newspaper called The Guardian, and The Guardian